Book 7, Part 2 of Ovid's Metamorphoses. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Elizabeth Klett. Metamorphoses by Publius Ovidius Naso. Translated by Brooks Moore. Book 7, Part 2. But so her malice might be satisfied, Medea feigned she had a quarrel with her husband, and for safety she had fled to Pelias. There, since the king himself was heavy with old age, his daughters gave her generous reception. And these girls the shrewd Medea in a short time won, by her false show of friendliness. And while among the most remarkable of her achievements she was telling how she had rejuvenated Aeson, and she dwelt particularly on that strange event, these daughters were induced to hope that by some skill like this their father might regain his lost youth also. And they begged of her this boon, persuading her to name the price, no matter if it was large. She did not reply at once, and seemed to hesitate, and so she held their fond minds in a deep suspense by her feigned meditation. When she had at length declared she would restore his youth, she said to them, "That you may have strong confidence in this my promised boon, the oldest leader of your flock of sheep shall be changed to a lamb again by my prized drugs." Straightway a woolly ram, worn out with length of untold years, was brought, his great horns curved around his hollow temples. After she had cut his scrawny throat with her sharp knife Thessalian, barely staining it with his thin blood, Medea plunged his carcass in a bronze-made kettle, throwing in it at the same time juices of great potency. These made his body shrink and burnt away his 2 horns, and with horns his years. And now thin bleating was heard from within the pot, and even while they wondered at the sound, a lamb jumped out and frisking ran away to find some udder with its needed milk. Amazed, the daughters looked on, and now that these promises had been performed, they urged more eagerly their first request. 3 times Phoebus unyoked his steeds after their plunge in Ebro's stream, and on the 4th night stars shone brilliant on the dark foil of the sky, and then the treacherous daughter of Aeetes set some clear water over a hot fire, and put in it herbs of no potency. And now a death-like sleep held the king down, his body all relaxed, and with the king his guards, a sleep which incantations with the potency of magic words had given. The sad king's daughters, as they had been bid, were in his room, and with Medea stood around his bed. "Why do you hesitate?" Medea said. "You laggards, come and draw your swords. Let out his old blood that I may refill his empty veins again with young blood. In your hands your father's life and youth are resting. You, his daughters, must have love for him, and if the hopes you have are not all vain, come, do your duty by your father, drive out old age at the point of your good weapons, and let out his blood enfeebled, cure him with the stroke of iron." Spurred on by these words, as each one of them was filial, she became the leader in the most unfilial act, and that she might not be most wicked did the wicked deed. No one could bear to see her own blows, so they turned their eyes away, and every face averted so, they blindly struck him with their cruel hands. The old man, streaming with his blood, still raised himself on elbow, and half mangled tried to get up from his bed. With all those swords around him, he stretched out his pale arms, and he cried, "What will you do, my daughters? What has armed you to the death of your loved father?" Their wrong courage left them, and their hands fell. When he would have said still more, Medea cut his throat, and plunged his mangled body into boiling water. Only because her winged dragon sailed swiftly with her up to the lofty sky, escaped Medea punishment for this unheard-of crime. Her chariot sailed above embowered Pelion, long the lofty home of Chiron, over Othrys, and the vale made famous where Serambus met his fate. Serambus, by the aid of nymphs, from there was wafted through the air on wings, when earth was covered by the overwhelming sea, and so escaped Deucalion's flood, uncrowned. She passed by Pitane upon the left with its huge serpent image of hard stone, and also past the grove called Ida's, where the stolen bull was changed by Bacchus' power into a hunted stag. In that same vale Paris lies buried in the sand, and over fields where Mera, warning, harked, Medea flew, over the city of Eurypylus upon the Isle of Kos, whose women wore the horns of cattle, when from there had gone the herd of Hercules, and over Rhodes, beloved of Phoebus, where Telchinian tribes dwelt, whose bad eyes corrupting power shot forth. Jove, utterly despising, thrust them deep beneath his brother's waves, over the walls of old Carthia, where Alcidamas had seen with wonder a tame dove arise from his own daughter's body. And she saw the lakes of Hyre in Tumesia's vale by swans frequented. There, to satisfy his love for sickness, Phyleus gave 2 living vultures. Shell for him subdued a lion, and delivered it to him, and mastered a great bull at his command. But when the wearied Phyleus refused to render to his friend the valued bull, indignant the youth said, "You shall regret your hasty words," which having said, he leaped from a high precipice as if to death, but gliding through the air on snow-white wings was changed into a swan. Dissolved in tears, his mother Hyre knew not he was saved, and weeping formed the lake that bears her name. And over Pleuron, where on trembling wings escaped the mother comb from her sons, Medea flew, and over the far isle Caloria, sacred to Latona. She beheld the conscious fields whose lawful king together with his queen were changed to birds. Upon her right Selene could be seen. There Menaphon, degraded as a beast, outraged his mother. In the distance she beheld Cephissus, who lamented long his hapless grandson, by Apollo changed into a bloated sea-calf, and she saw the house where King Eumelus mourned the death of his aspiring son. Borne on the wings of her enchanted dragons, she arrived at Corinth, whose inhabitants, 'tis said, from many mushrooms watered by the rains, sprang into being. There she spent some years. But after the new wife had been burnt by the Colchian witchcraft, and 2 seas had seen the king's own palace all aflame, then savagely she drew her sword, and bathed it in the blood of her own infant sons, by which atrocious act she was revenged, and she, a wife and mother, fled the sword of her own husband Jason. On the wings of her enchanted Titan dragons borne, she made escape securely, nor delayed until she entered the defended walls of great Minerva's city, at the hour when aged Periphas, transformed by Jove, together with his queen, on eagle wings flew over its encircling walls, with whom the guilty Halcyon, skimming seas safely escaped, upon her balanced wings. And after all these events, Medea went to Aegeus, king of Athens, where she found protection from her enemies for all this evil done. With added wickedness, Aegeus, after that, united her to him in marriage. All unknown to him came Theseus to his kingly court. Before the time his valor had established peace on all the isthmus, raved by dual seas. Medea, seeking his destruction, brewed the juice of aconite, infesting shores of Scythia, where 'tis fabled the plant grew on soil infected by Cerberian teeth. There is a gloomy entrance to a cave, that follows a declivitous descent. There Hercules with chains of adamant dragged from the dreary edge of Tartarus that monster watchdog Cerberus, which vain opposing turned his eyes aslant from light, from dazzling day. Delirious, enraged, that monster shook the air with triple howls, and frothing sprinkled as it raved the fields once green with spewing of white poison foam. And this, converted into plants, sucked up a deadly venom with the nourishment of former soils, from which productive grew upon the rock thus formed the noxious plant, by rustics from that caused, named aconite. Medea worked on Aegeus to present his own son Theseus with a deadly cup of aconite, prevailing by her art so that he deemed his son an enemy. Theseus unwittingly received the cup, but just before he touched it to his lips, his father recognized the sword he wore, for graven on its ivory hilt was wrought a known device, the token of his race. Astonished, Aegeus struck the poison cup from his devoted son's confiding lips. Medea suddenly escaped from death, in a dark whirlwind her witch-singing raised. Recoiling from such utter wickedness, rejoicing that his son escaped from death, the grateful father kindled altar flames, and gave rich treasure to the living gods. He slaughtered scores of oxen, decked with flowers and gilded horns. The sun has never shone upon a day more famous in that land, for all the elders and the common folk united in festivities, with wine inspiring wit and song. "O you," they sang, "immortal Theseus, victory was yours. Did you not slaughter the huge bull of Crete? Yes, you did slay the boar of Crommyon, where now the peasant unmolested ploughs. And Periphetes, wielder of the club, was worsted when he struggled with your strength. And fierce Procrustes, matched with you beside the rapid river, met his death. And even Cercyon in Eleusis lost his wicked life, inferior to your might. And Sinus, a monstrosity of strength, who bent the trunks of trees and used his might against the world for everything that's wrong. For evil he would force down to the earth, pine tops to shoot men's bodies through the air. Even the road to Megara is safe, for you did hurl the robber Sciron sheer over the cliff. Both land and sea denied his bones a resting place, as tossed about they changed into the cliffs that bear his name. How can we tell the number of your deeds, deeds glorious, that now exceed your years? For you, brave hero, we give public thanks and prayers.